The rain poured hard that night, blurring the glass windows of the sleek black car as business tycoon Richard Hale sat in the back seat. His chauffeur slowed down near a dimly lit building on the city's edge, a homeless shelter. Richard wasn't the kind of man to stop at places like this, but something tugged at him when he noticed a familiar silhouette inside. His eyes narrowed. Could it be? Through the fogged glass, he saw her. Emily Carter, his secretary. Always polished, always professional, the woman who kept his empire running with her sharp mind and quiet efficiency. But here she was, in a threadbare sweater, kneeling beside a child, handing him a warm bowl of soup with a gentle smile. Richard's heart thudded. Why would his secretary, who worked late nights drafting reports and managing his demanding schedule, be at a shelter after hours? For a man who measured life in profits and deals, this was a puzzle he couldn't ignore. "Stop the car," Richard ordered. His chauffeur hesitated but pulled over. The tycoon stepped out, rain soaking his expensive suit, but he barely noticed. He walked toward the entrance, curiosity gnawing at him. Emily looked up, and froze. Their eyes locked. Shock flashed across her face, followed quickly by something else, fear. Richard had seen many things in boardrooms, but nothing prepared him for this. In that moment, he realized Emily was hiding a story far deeper than her professional smile ever revealed. And tonight, he was about to uncover it. For a long moment, silence hung heavy between them. Richard, the billionaire tycoon feared by competitors, stood dripping wet in the doorway of a shelter he'd never dreamed of entering. Emily, his secretary, the woman who never missed a deadline, looked like a completely different person here, fragile, tired, yet radiating warmth as she comforted strangers. "Mr. Hale," she whispered, clutching the ladle in her hand as though it were a shield. "What are you doing here?" Richard's voice was calm but firm. "That's what I should be asking you." Emily glanced at the volunteers and children nearby. Their eyes darted curiously toward the well-dressed man. She sighed and motioned for him to step aside into the narrow hallway. "I didn't want anyone at work to know," she said softly, "but this shelter, it's where I live now." Richard's brow furrowed. "Live? Emily, you have a job. A good salary. How?" Her lips trembled as she explained. Her mother's medical bills had swallowed her savings. Rent went unpaid. She tried to keep working, to stay composed, but when her landlord finally evicted her, she had nowhere to go. The shelter had been her refuge for weeks. Richard felt an unexpected sting in his chest. He'd been surrounded by wealth his entire life, yet here stood the woman who kept his empire afloat, living without a home. "You should have told me," he said, his voice breaking its usual armor of steel. Emily shook her head. "I didn't want pity. I just needed to survive." For the first time in years, Richard Hale didn't think about profit margins or market shares. He thought about humanity, about hers, and maybe even his own. And in that moment, he made a silent promise: her life was about to change. The next morning, Richard arrived at his office earlier than usual. But instead of reviewing financial reports or scanning stock charts, his thoughts kept circling back to Emily's quiet confession. He remembered the way she smiled at the children in the shelter, despite her own struggles. It shook him. When Emily walked in later that day, her posture was stiff, her eyes avoiding his. She clearly expected judgment, or worse, dismissal. "Sit down," Richard said gently, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. She obeyed, her hands folded tightly in her lap. "I thought about what you told me," he began. "And I want you to know, you don't need to hide anymore. Not from me." Emily's throat tightened. "Mr. Hale, please, I can still do my job. I don't want special treatment. I just need to work." Richard leaned forward. "Emily, I don't see weakness. I see strength. You've been holding my world together while yours was falling apart." Her eyes glistened, but she quickly blinked the tears away. He reached into his drawer and slid an envelope across the desk. This is a temporary solution. Enough to clear the medical debts and secure a safe apartment. Consider it an advance against your future salary. Emily's lips parted in shock. I can't accept this. You can, Richard insisted. And you will. Because no one who gives so much should be left with so little. For the first time, her shoulders relaxed. A flicker of relief broke through her guarded expression. Richard wasn't used to this feeling, the satisfaction that didn't come from a deal signed, but from a life lifted. And he knew, deep down, this was only the beginning. Days turned into weeks, and Emily's life began to stabilize. With Richard's help, she moved into a modest apartment, her mother received proper care, and the constant weight pressing on her shoulders started to ease. Yet, she still arrived at work each day with the same humility, never asking for more than what was given. But Richard noticed something new in himself. He found excuses to stop by her desk, to ask about her mother, to hear about the shelter she still visited after work. She hadn't abandoned it, even with her own life improving. Emily kept serving meals, folding blankets, comforting strangers. One evening, Richard surprised her by showing up at the shelter again, this time not as an observer but as a volunteer. He rolled up his sleeves, awkwardly ladling soup beside her. The other volunteers whispered, amazed to see the billionaire tycoon working like an ordinary man. Emily glanced at him, half smiling. You don't have to be here. Maybe not, Richard replied, but I think I need to be. As he handed a steaming bowl to a shivering teenager, something inside him cracked wide open. These weren't numbers on a balance sheet. They were lives, fragile, real, deserving of dignity. Emily's eyes softened as she watched him. For the first time, she saw not just her boss, but a man willing to step down from his pedestal and stand beside her. That night, when they walked out together, Richard looked at Emily and said, You opened my eyes. I thought I was saving you, but maybe you're the one saving me. Emily's heart swelled, knowing this moment would forever change them both. Months later, Richard's empire looked the same from the outside, towering buildings, thriving investments, endless board meetings. But inside, something fundamental had shifted. The man who once measured success by profit margins now measured it by the impact he made on people's lives. Emily flourished in ways she hadn't imagined. No longer burdened by fear of eviction or crushing debt, she poured her energy into her work, and into expanding the shelter's programs. Richard quietly funded new beds, medical supplies, and educational workshops, but he insisted Emily take the lead. It's your vision, he told her. I'm just the fuel. At the shelter's opening ceremony for a new wing, children ran across the freshly painted floors, their laughter echoing against the walls. Volunteers clapped, and cameras flashed as Emily stood at the podium, her voice trembling with gratitude. I once thought my life was over when I lost my home, she said. But what I've learned is that sometimes, hardship is what reveals true kindness. And kindness can change the world. The audience applauded, but Emily's eyes found Richard's in the crowd. He gave her a small nod, a silent reminder that he was proud, not because she worked for him, but because she had inspired him to become something better. Later that night, as they walked out into the cool air, Emily whispered, You didn't just change my world, Mr. Hale. You changed your own. Richard smiled softly. Then maybe we both found what we were searching for. And with that, they stepped forward, not as tycoon and secretary, but as two people bound by compassion, proving that true wealth is not in money, but in humanity.